Hello! So far with our discussion of bias and rhetoric in news information sources, we've discussed a few things. I've had you think about your own personal biases as you are a fully functional, fully formed member of society with your own opinions about how the world should and should not run. We also have a little bit of thinking about where you get your information from, where it comes from, if you are someone who keeps up with current events, whether or not you seek them out through other sources or you have them presented to you via social media. I wanted you to kind of have an inkling and an understanding of where do you find your information out about what's happening in the world. I've also had you think about the web of one, where the different types of media that is kind of tossed your way can be a little different than other people's spheres of influence when it comes to their media because of the nature of how we deal with social media and how it kind of puts us into separate categories and separate boxes and it can be a little complex and a little complicated, especially because each of the different news sources that's available to you has their own particular brand of bias. So what I have available now is something that says NewsBiasChart. I'm going to click on this, but you also have access to this in Canvas. So a few things about this chart first. Number one, it is not created by me, therefore it has its own level of bias because none of the different news sources on this chart would ever themselves place themselves in this chart. As you can see down here, it says where this is courtesy of, so you can look at them for their own particular set of bias when it comes to where things fit on this chart. But the way that it is structured is that you can see you have the left, the liberal, the democratic leaning bias websites over here on the left side, the right, conservative, Republican style websites are more on the right. But they break this up into a couple other aspects when it comes to how it leans. Okay, and again, this is courtesy of this particular website. So I looked for a chart that I felt was the most, the most unbiased when it came to how it described the political leanings and also just how far things kind of veered one direction over another. I know that if you asked each of these individual news sources how they are when it comes to their bias, they would put themselves right here in the very center as being unbiased, and all others would be radically one side or the other. And I felt this one was the best way of breaking these up. And again, you do not have to necessarily agree with this because the activity that we're going to be involving ourselves with will generally have us doing a little bit of assessing on this as well. But when you have a website that's giving news, a neutral website, one that presents information as it is, would be the most ideal sort of situation. Not only that, but you're also looking for things that are of high quality. What does high quality mean versus mixed or poor quality? A lot of the quality has to do with like how professional the writers are for the said website? Are they people who went to journalism school? Are they people who know, who are experts on their topics that they're discussing? Are they people who write professionally or who speak professionally and who can be held to a high sense of professionalism and decorum when it comes to what it is that they create? And as we get down into the mixed and poor quality, that's where you have people with less training, with where their opinions guide their research and their abilities more than an attempt to be objectively unbiased in what they do. So now here at the top where they say leans left or leans right, these little tiny subtitles, not horrible, means that you're going to find information on different pieces of news where it has a bit of a lean to either one side of the political perspective, where you're still being presented with high quality information from like good sources, but it might have a little bit more of a focused viewpoint, as in it might leave left-leaning people seeming more positive if it's on the leans left, or on the leans right, where right-leaning ideology is left in a little bit more positive light. Where we start to think about partisanship, where it says hyperpartisan left or hyperpartisan right, that means that we're going to be very focused on thinking that one ideology is superior to other ideologies. So when they say hyperpartisan left, what they're meaning is a lot of these sources are going to be sources that if you are a left-leaning individual, if you read information from a lot of these websites, it will make you feel the best about continuing to believe that ideology and feel worse about the people who believe the polar opposite. Same goes with on the hyperpartisan right. Where it says radical right, this is where the people that write for these websites have such a clear agenda when it comes to what you're looking for that they're going to leave out lots of important pieces of information about their topics. They're going to leave out a lot of things that could possibly influence your decision when it comes to understanding what news is being presented. So when they say not worth it, what they are meaning is that these should not be the only sources of information that you are looking at if you're trying to find information out about a topic. Okay? And again, you can go all the way to the left and to the right to get a dramatically different viewpoint about the same topic. Okay? So in an ideal world, we would always avoid the poor quality websites. And the reason, again, that makes a site more poor quality is that you have people that are not only completely on the radical left or right side, but that the types of writing is very aggressive and very unhelpful when it comes to learning about a particular topic. It's just there to perpetuate anger and frustration towards people who have a different ideology. So you'll notice that there's a lot of different websites in here. Some of them are TV, some of them are newspapers, some of them are websites, online news sources, etc. And they're all kind of spread around in this almost, kind of arc that kind of goes up to this idealized section up here and then kind of tapers off as you go to the sides. I can see why they have it go to a lower quality as it goes farther to the left and to the right, because the more distant you get from journalism, where it should be a lot more unbiased and factual based, the more of a quality discrepancy you're going to get. So if you're only focusing on one side of an issue, it's going to become a little bit lower quality. Okay? So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking at some particular newsworthy topic, and I'm going to have you examine that newsworthy topic while looking at 3 different sources, and each of these sources are going to be from one of these 3 generalized sections of where the news media lies. So I'll have you choose one of the sources from this sort of neutral section. Okay, the neutral section would be you're going to get a lot of very basic facts about the topics that you might look up, and unfortunately sometimes it's a little bit more dry than entertaining, which good quality facts are going to be dry as opposed to entertaining because we're talking about facts. But I'm also going to want you to look at the same topic from a source that leans to the left, or I'm sorry, not leans left, but is more approaching this hyper-partisan left area right here, so in this generalized scope, and also one that's to the right, okay, in the same sort of vein. I'm going to have you look at the same topic, and I'm going to have you try to find some articles on this topic from each of these 3 different sections, and I'm going to actually have you examine the differences in the way that the topic is presented from each of these different ideologies. Now, one of the things about this idea is that it's difficult to have a generalized topic for discussion when it comes to an assignment, as things are constantly and radically changing. In the past, I've done this thinking about climate change and some other topics that could still be valuable, but if they're not currently in the forefront of the news media, it might be difficult to find articles that are relatively recent and about the same particular event. So, when you go to each of these different sites, and I'm going to want you to, again, to find one from each of these different generalized sections, you're going to be looking up a topic, and you'll have to find their different search functions on the website. Just trying to dig around until you find it might be difficult unless you do a search. And I want you to find an article about the topic that is relatively new, within just a couple weeks of the date that you're searching. And when you find it, you should definitely keep track of the title of the article that you are looking at and the name of the people who wrote the article. The name of the people who wrote the article. If they don't have a name of somebody who wrote the article, that might be a good thing to document as well. It's always important to know who's writing the information that's being presented to you. So, again, to summarize, I'm going to give you a topic, and you're going to be looking up this topic on 3 different websites, one from each of the different generalized sections. I'm going to want you to find an article, and I'm going to want you to document the name of the article and the person who wrote it and the date in which it came out. Again, it's ideal to have an article from a news source that's recent as opposed to older, because things are dramatically changing, especially with news. I don't have any specific links for any of these websites. So if you look at the names of them, you'll have to do a generalized search for the name of the news media organization, and you'll have to find articles on there yourself. And I won't have anything specific for you to look at. I will give you a topic though. So good luck.